The past, with all its layers and shadows, often whispers to us in ways we can barely comprehend until we find ourselves standing right in the midst of its echoes. It was during the early months of 2016, a time teetering on the edge of my first year at college in Manila, that I, along with my classmates, ventured into a project that would forever change my perspective on history and hauntings. Our documentary project began innocently enough, born from a mixture of youthful ambition and academic requirement. We were a group of 5, each with our unique quirks and fears, tasked with exploring haunted locations in Manila for a class. The idea was to blend local folklore with historical truths, threading our narrative into a tapestry of chilling real-life stories. Initially, we planned to focus on Fort Santiago, known for its historical significance and ghostly sightings. However, during one of our early meetings, held in a cluttered college library, Marco, ever the enthusiast for the macabre, proposed a switch that set our course towards a more ominous destination. Why not the Manila Film Center? He suggested, his eyes gleaming with a mix of excitement and something darker. The rest of us exchanged uneasy glances. The film center's reputation was well known. It was a place marred by tragedy and haunted by the past. Literally. Mia, whose father was the caretaker of the Manila Film Center, had always told us chilling tales about the place. According to her, and many others, the spirits of construction workers who had died tragically during the building's rushed construction in the early 80s still lingered in its halls. They were allegedly buried alive as the structure, meant to be completed in record time for a film festival, collapsed on them. The government, at the time, had pushed for the building's speedy completion, overlooking safety for the sake of prestige. The decision to switch our documentary's focus was not made lightly. Laya, the shyest among us, was visibly uncomfortable with the idea, her face pale as she voiced her concerns about disturbing spirits that might still roam there. Jojo, on the other hand, was all for it, driven by a mix of bravado and genuine curiosity about the paranormal. As for me, the thought was unsettling, yet undeniably compelling. The film center wasn't just a haunted site. It was a symbol of historical negligence, a monument to those forgotten in the rush towards progress. As we delved deeper into our preparations, visiting the film center for the first time, I couldn't shake off the eerie feeling that washed over me. Standing before the imposing structure, its once grand facade now weathered and eerie, the reality of our undertaking began to sink in. Maya's father met us at the entrance, his appearance strikingly reminiscent of an old gangster film character, sharp-eyed and rugged. His deep voice added an extra layer of chill as he began the tour, pointing out spots where paranormal activity had been reported. Our cameras and recorders seemed trivial in the face of such stories. As Mia's father recounted the tales of wails and shadows, each corner of the massive building seemed to whisper secrets of its tragic past. I recorded everything, the weight of history pressing down on my chest. That first visit, walking through corridors that echoed with more than just our footsteps, I realized this project was more than just an assignment. It was a journey into the heart of Manila's dark history, a plunge into the stories of those who could no longer tell them. And as we packed up our equipment that day, the sun setting behind the dilapidated structure, I knew we were about to uncover stories that might prefer to remain untold. Our second visit to the Manila Film Center was marked by a mix of trepidation and a strange, magnetic pull towards the stories encapsulated within its walls. Mia's father, with his deep, rumbling voice that seemed to echo off the decayed walls, greeted us with a nod, his face unreadable as if masked by the building's own mysterious aura. As we set up our equipment in the dim lobby, the air around us felt thick, heavy with unspoken histories. Maya's father started the tour with a grim smile. "Let's begin where the tragedy struck hardest," he suggested, leading us to the lower levels where the accident had claimed the lives of several workers decades ago. The chill in the air was palpable, and even Jojo's usual bravado seemed subdued. He recounted the incident in detail, his voice a low murmur against the backdrop of our soft footsteps. It was here, he pointed to a now barren expanse of concrete, where the scaffolding first gave way. His hands described the chaos of that day. Workers trapped under rubble, the frantic efforts to save them, and the eventual haunting decision to continue construction over the site as the festival deadline loomed. The tales weren't new to us, but hearing them in this context, surrounded by the oppressive atmosphere of the center, made them resonate deeper. I noticed Laya clutching her camera a little too tightly, her eyes wide as she scanned the shadowy corners. Marco, ever curious, asked questions that prompted Mia's father to delve deeper into the paranormal aspects. They say you can hear them at night, the workers crying out for justice, he whispered, almost theatrically, yet the sincerity in his tone was unmistakable. We ventured further into the building, each step seeming to stir whispers from the past. The hall where the main auditorium once buzzed with life now lay silent, a stark reminder of its vibrant past juxtaposed with its grim present. As Maya filmed, her father described the ghost sightings, figures seen in the periphery, vanishing when approached, eerie laughter echoing through empty halls, sudden cold spots that defied the stifling Manila heat. It was in one such spot that I felt it, a sudden drop in temperature and the faintest touch, like fingers brushing against my arm. Chilled, I turned quickly, half expecting to confront someone, but found only the empty space. Mia's father nodded at my startled expression. "It happens," he said, a note of grim satisfaction in his voice, as if the spirits had acknowledged our presence. Our recordings that day were filled with more than just interviews and ambient sounds. Laya captured what could only be described as anomalies, unexplained shadows that flitted across her lens, static disruptions that weren't there in the previous footage. Analyzing the footage later only deepened the mystery, as none of us could provide a logical explanation for what we had seen and felt. The day ended with us gathered outside the building, the sun setting with a fiery intensity that seemed almost defiant of the darkness within the film center. We discussed our findings, each of us processing the day's encounters in our own way. Laya was quieter than usual, troubled by what she had captured on camera. Jojo tried to lighten the mood with jokes, but his laughter was tinged with nervousness. Marco was thoughtful, his mind racing with possibilities for our documentary. As we packed up, the weight of the building's tragic past and its spectral present lingered with us. It was more than just a location for our project now. It had become a character in its own right, a silent narrator of its sorrowful tales. And as we left, the echoing of our footsteps mingled with the whispers of the evening we decided to attend the drag show at the Manila Film Center marked a surreal turn in our documentary journey. The center, usually shrouded in silence and somber tales, was transformed into a vibrant stage of colors and laughter. It was disorienting, seeing the space alive with lights and music, so starkly different from the haunted quietude we had become accustomed to. As the performers took the stage, their exuberance seemed to challenge the somber history of the place. Yet beneath the sequins and songs, the building's eerie essence lingered, like a shadow that refused to be dispelled by the spotlight. The juxtaposition was jarring. Here we were, in the heart of historical horrors, yet surrounded by a celebration of life and expression. Mia, whose father watched from the sidelines with an inscrutable expression, leaned over to me during the show. "Weird, isn't it, to think about what happened right where those dancers are performing?" Her voice was barely audible over the music, but her words sent a shiver down my spine. It was a stark reminder of the layers of history, some buried deeper than others. During the intermission, our group huddled together, the festive atmosphere making our earlier experiences seem almost distant. "This is good material for the documentary," Jojo remarked, gesturing at the crowd. "It shows how life goes on, no matter what." His attempt to stay upbeat was palpable, yet his eyes kept darting around, as if expecting the gaiety to crack at any moment. Leah, usually reticent, surprised us by expressing her mixed feelings. "It's like we're dancing on graves," she murmured, her camera hanging forgotten around her neck. "How many people come here, watch the show, and never think about the stories beneath their feet?" Her words resonated with us, highlighting the eerie duality of our setting, the present vividly alive, while the past moaned from the shadows. The second half of the show brought more laughter, more applause, but our group was quieter now, introspective. Each performance seemed to layer complexity onto our understanding of the film center, as if each note sung was a counterpoint to a scream unheard. As the night deepened, our mood shifted. The earlier part of the evening's revelry gave way to an unsettling calm as the crowd thinned out. We took a final tour of the center, the corridors now empty, the echoes of the show fading like the last vestiges of daylight. It was during this walk that the building seemed to reclaim its haunted heritage, the walls whispering secrets long kept. Suddenly, Marco stopped, his face pale under the flickering hallway light. "Did you hear that?" he asked, his voice tense. We paused, listening, and there it was, a soft moaning, distant yet distinct. No laughter accompanied this sound, no applause. It was as though the building itself sighed. The walk back to the main hall was silent, each of us lost in thought. The juxtaposition of the night's events had left us with more questions than answers. How do we reconcile such vibrant life with such tragic death? How do we tell a story that honors both? That night, I lay awake, pondering the dual spirits of the film center, the joy and the sorrow, the visible and the invisible. Our project was no longer just about ghost stories. It was about the layers of human experience, the resilience of culture, and the shadows that history leaves behind. As I drifted off to sleep, the echoes of the past mingled with the sounds of the present, crafting a narrative in my mind that was as complex as the film center itself. Waking from a nightmare, the thin line between sleep and wakefulness blurred. I felt an icy chill clinging to my skin, a lingering touch from the dream. In my mind's eye, I was still in the depths of the Manila Film Center, not as a visitor, but as one of the trapped workers, their cries echoing in my ears, the weight of concrete pressing down. The horror of it clung to me, even as the early morning light tried to chase away the shadows of the night. Sitting up in bed, I tried to steady my breathing, the vivid images from the dream refusing to fade. It was more than just a nightmare. It felt like a memory, not my own, but imposed upon me by the intense emotions and tragic stories of the film center. As I collected myself, the reality of what we were doing, documenting these haunted histories, weighed heavily on me. Later that morning, our group met to discuss the previous day's experiences and the footage we had captured. The air was thick with a mix of excitement and apprehension as we gathered around the cluttered table, our laptops and cameras forming a technological barrier against the unknown. Did anyone else feel different after last night? I asked, my voice hesitant, testing the waters. One by one, my peers shared their own restless nights. Laya spoke of shadows flitting across her dreams, while Jojo admitted to a sense of unease he couldn't shake off. Marco, ever the skeptic, was quiet, his brow furrowed as he reviewed the footage, looking for logical explanations where there seemed to be none. "We captured something," Maya said, breaking the tense silence. She played a clip on her laptop, the screen flickering with static at crucial moments, distorting the images but not the sounds, a soft moaning, much like what Marco had heard in the hallway. It's not just in our heads. There's something there, and it's coming through on the recordings. The revelation brought a new level of seriousness to our project. We were no longer just college students making a documentary. We had become chroniclers of the unseen, the unheard. Our discussion turned to the ethical implications of our project. Are we ready to share this with the world? Laya questioned, her voice tinged with concern. What if we're disturbing something that should be left alone? As we debated, I realized that our journey was as much about understanding the past as it was about confronting our own beliefs about the supernatural. We agreed to delve deeper into the history of the film center, to give voice to those long silenced, ensuring our documentary would be respectful yet revealing. The final part of the chapter saw us returning to the film center one last time. The building seemed to recognize us, its hallways whispering as we set up for a final session of interviews and recordings. Maya's father joined us, his stories now tinged with a personal note, as if he too felt the urgency to document what was hidden beneath the layers of concrete and time. As we packed up our equipment for the last time, the sun setting behind the aging facade of the film center, I felt a sense of completion, mixed with a hint of melancholy. We had started this project as a challenge, a simple college assignment, but it had grown into something profound, a journey into the heart of Manila's haunted history. Our documentary, Whispers from the Walls, was completed weeks later, each frame, each interview, each eerie noise carefully woven into a narrative that spoke of tragedy, resilience, and the human spirit. The screening at our college was met with silence, then applause. It was clear we had touched something deep in our audience, perhaps even stirred their own memories or fears. Reflecting on the entire experience, I realized that we had not only documented the ghosts of the past, but had also discovered something about ourselves. Our capacity to listen, to empathize, and to respect the stories that history whispers, if only we are brave enough to hear them.